Can travel still be fun during the pandemic? Welcome to another episode of the Mental Health Break. Today I'm joined by Brianna Shade, who will talk to us about how we can make the most of our travel plans. Hi, I'm Dr. Nafisa Sekandari, a licensed clinical psychologist specializing in anxiety-based disorders. I created the Mental Health Break podcast to give you simple, actionable, step-by-step strategies to help you prioritize your mental health. Mental illness can cost you time and money. Ignoring your symptoms will only make the problems worse. Taking time out of your busy day to dedicate to improving your mental health can lead to long-term health and wellness. In this podcast, each week you'll learn tips, tricks, and proven strategies to help you regain control of your life, all while prioritizing your mental health. If you want to improve your life, regain control of your mental health, and feel empowered, you're in the right place. Let's get started. Today's episode is brought to you by the Transforming Anxiety course, an online, self-paced anxiety course to help you manage and control your anxiety from the comfort, privacy, and convenience of your own home. Learn how to transform your anxiety in just 6 short weeks. Course registration is now open. To learn more, visit transforminganxiety.com/course. Today, I'm joined by Brianna, who will teach us how to plan fun getaways and how to make the most out of our travel. Let me introduce her briefly before I bring her on. Brianna Shade with Big Tiny World Travel is a photographer and expert traveler who quit her job in 2019 to travel full-time with her husband. She embraces the freedom of a nomadic lifestyle and the cultural connections that come with it. She hasn't looked back even when COVID shut the world down, and she now teaches other adventurous couples how to plan their best trips and get the most out of their own travel at bigtinyworld.com. Hi, Brianna. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. It's great to be here. I'm excited.
I'm excited to talk to you about traveling. So I just shared a little bit about your background, about quitting your job and traveling full-time with your husband. So can you tell us a little bit more about what got you into traveling and embracing this nomadic lifestyle?
Sure, absolutely. So my husband and I have always loved to travel. We've been to many places all around the world. It kind of all started with a trip to Japan, and we absolutely fell in love with how different and diverse the culture was from our own. And on the heels of that, I actually did an April Fool's Day joke. So funny story. I published this thing on Facebook saying, "Hey, guess what, everybody? I've been accepted into the JET program, which is a Japanese English teaching exchange program in Japan, and I'm going to go live there for a year." And everybody got all excited. And there were some friends who were saying, "Wow, that's really great." Others who saw it was April Fool's Day and it's like, "Yeah, I'm not falling for that." And my sister was one of them who just she's like, "Yeah, right, you wish." But we got such a laugh out of that, that we were talking about it over a bottle of wine, which is when all the best ideas are hatched, later that evening. And we got to thinking, it's like, well, what's stopping us from doing something like this? I mean, wouldn't it be great to just kind of, you hear about these people who quit their jobs and go traveling for a year or whatever, and why don't we do something like that? And so the next day when we had sobered up and it still kind of sounded like a good enough idea, we decided to move forward with it and proceeded to save up a chunk of change in our savings accounts. And 3 years later, we quit our jobs and sold all our stuff, moved out of our apartments, found a loving home for our 2 little kitties, and went traveling. And basically didn't look back. So going into that is like, I really had the goal of never returning to the 9 to 5. And I really wanted to find some alternate sources of income because we just loved the traveling so much. And we left in 2019, and we had planned on a 14-month trip, and then to come back and maybe kind of reestablish or reevaluate our lives and see what steps we wanted to take after that. But then, of course, COVID hit. And so we were forced home after only 9 months of traveling. And we've kind of been hunkered down, but working on building a travel business instead. So that's just kind of the quick overview of what has brought us to where we are now.
Yeah, COVID kind of messed everything up for people. But with this whole pandemic, also, travel just seems really stressful when I hear
Mhm.
about all the people losing their cool on the airplanes and then the long lines at the airports and wearing a mask the entire time.
Mhm.
So, what have you found about just making travel less stressful, given that it should be fun, right? This is something we all dream about, but when we have to actually think about, oh, I have to sit on a plane with all these people kicking my
Mhm.
chair and lugging my luggage everywhere. How have you found making travel more fun and less stressful?
So I'm a type A kind of person, and so I obviously want to reduce stress as much as possible because that's just my natural tendency. And so I have found that there are a few things that really help with that. First of all, is planning. So if you know what's coming and you have an idea of what to expect, then you'll naturally have less stress. Also, if you are a bit more prepared, then if something goes sideways, then you have some contingency plans in place and you know how to handle the situation. All of that, feel it. Oftentimes, you feel stressed because you don't know what to expect, and so having some of that preparation can certainly help. The other side of that, though, is to just be flexible. And I know that sounds easier said than done. But if you're able to say, okay, look, I understand going into this that not everything is going to go exactly to plan, and not everything is going to happen the way that I expect it to. And so I'm just going to kind of go with the flow, and I'm going to accept that things are going to change on the fly, and maybe I'll have an even better experience because of that. And so getting that into that mindset before you travel is really useful, so that, okay, well, my plane was canceled and they can't get me on another flight for until tomorrow or whatever. Well, maybe I spend a few extra hours in this city that I wasn't expecting to have a layover in, and you might discover something new. And so it's just kind of, being willing to go with the flow with that.
I think in any situation that makes a big difference. And then having a type A personality, we want everything to go a certain way and it has to be according to our
Yes.
expectations. And traveling is supposed to be fun and we're supposed to let things go. And since this is a mental health podcast, I wanted to kind of bring it all back and make it connected to mental health.
Hmm.
Are there, so you've only traveled for like 9 months, you said, right? And during your
Hmm.
travels, what did you learn about how to make the most out of your travel so that you are enjoying it besides just being flexible? Any tips that you have or any
Hmm.
specific locations that are perfect for people that just want to get away from it all and just recharge and relax? Or are you
Hmm.
the type that everything is planned when you go on vacation and you have to make them? Because that's how I am, and that's why it
Yeah.
stresses me out. I want to, like, I'm never going to come back here again because I believe there's so much of
Hmm.
the world I don't want to repeat where I'm going. So when
Yeah.
I'm there, I want to make the most of it, but that can leave me in need of another vacation for my vacation. So what
Exactly.
tips and strategies do you have?
Absolutely. So, yeah, and that's interesting because we used to start our trips like that as well. So, obviously, we came from the 9 to 5 lifestyle where you're used to that. I only have 2 weeks out of every single year that I can go and explore a tiny, tiny sliver of what this big world has to offer. And so, yeah, you are inclined to try to cram as much as you possibly can into those few days, and it can leave you completely burnt out. But it's okay if it's a temporary little 2 week thing, and then you come back, you have your little vacation from your vacation, and you recover and get back into the swing of things, and it's okay. But for something longer term, like a 9 month trip, we found very quickly that that was not sustainable. So we started our trip kind of like that of, oh, well, we're here and we have to soak up as much as we possibly can because I have no idea when we're going to be in South Africa again, or Namibia, or Europe, or South America, or wherever. And so I got to go see this, and I got to go see this, and I got to do this and that, and whatever else. And so I guess the thing that we learned from that was to prioritize what we really absolutely had to do. It's like, okay, I've heard of this, this, and this, and I really want to go to this ruin, and I want to eat at this famous restaurant, and I want to check out this particular landmark. And then let the rest go, because honestly, this world is a huge place, and any single one place that you go to is going to have so much to offer that, I mean, people live in these places for a reason, and even they haven't experienced everything. So you can't put that pressure on yourself to try to experience everything during a short stint in any given place. But by that same token, if there's a place that you know has a lot of stuff that you don't want to cram into a short period of time, we're huge advocates for slow travel. And again, we didn't start that way primarily because we started in Africa, and Africa is actually quite expensive, depending on where you go. And so we didn't want to spend a whole lot of time there. But once we got to Europe, shortly thereafter, we found that if you kind of stayed put in a single city for 3 weeks, it was a lot more affordable and a lot more relaxing on your soul and your energy, and you're able to recoup. And that we also built in kind of rest times. So we did a lot of house sitting, which was a great way to kind of, you get this place all to yourself. You don't have to worry about checking in and out of a hotel or anything like that. Plus, we love our kitties, and so it was a way for us to reconnect with little furry friends while we're traveling, and to just take it slow, and so we'd have maybe a couple of weeks on where we're traveling all around whatever else, and then we take a week or two off where we just kind of stay put in wherever we're house sitting, spend some time with the kitties. If the place had a pool, maybe we just chill there for a bit, do barbecues and whatever else. We were also doing a lot of blogging at the time, so that was a good time for us to just kind of sit down and reflect on everything that we had been through, and journal that, and go through all of the thousands of pictures that we took and whatever else. And it was a good way to kind of decompress from all of that. And so I definitely recommend, even on the shorter trips now, I think it's changed how we will approach those as well. So if you're going for a 2-week vacation, for example, definitely bake in a day or two at least where you don't have anything planned. And maybe you stay at the resort or the hotel and read a book by the pool, or relax on the beach, or just do nothing for a bit. It's okay, even if you're in another place, to sit and watch Netflix for a day. It's okay. And your mind, you need that reset. Absolutely.
Yeah, I deal with a lot of patients that have anxiety, and a lot of them are that type A personality where they have to just plan every little detail, and they get really stressed when things don't go according to plan. Everything is planned ahead of time. And so over time, over the sessions, as they learn how to manage their anxiety and they're able to allow their vacation to unfold, I've really learned a lot from them, and that how much more satisfying their relationship is when they go to a place that they didn't plan on going, where they just sat and just enjoyed the view for a while. So I'm definitely working on that for myself. And I've actually made it a goal to kind of go to a place and do an overview and enjoy as much as possible. And if I really like that place, then that's a place to go back to and really enjoy for a lot longer, right? But you did mention some ways to kind of cut costs, but traveling can be very expensive, and financial stress is definitely a thing. And when you're going out there and you're spending all that money, and then what are some ways that you've learned how to budget or actually save money, and what are some ways to cut the cost of travel and cut the stress of the financial burden of traveling when you're traveling for 2 weeks or for several months?
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, we have so many budget tricks because along with being a type A, I absolutely hate to spend money. And so I have gotten really, really good at shaving off costs wherever I possibly can. I already mentioned house sitting, and I definitely advocate for that. And I think that's a wonderful way to travel the world It's a program that's particularly prevalent in kind of the Western world. So it's going to be the US, Europe, Canada, even Australia. But there are all sorts of opportunities even in Southeast Asia, I know, and all around the world. And so it's just one option that if you like pets, especially, it's good for your mental health and for your wallet, because what the program is it actually who are traveling with travelers who are on the road in their cities, and say, okay, well, you are leaving your house, but you're leaving pets behind who need care, and you have travelers in your city who need a place to stay, and so they match those people up, and no money is exchanged. So you pay once to be part of the program, but then you're not paying like a nightly fee or anything like that to actually stay there. And so that was one of our secret weapons all across Europe, and we ended up getting about 4.5 months free when we put them all together of lodging, and that's a huge cost savings. And that's one of the main ways that we were able to travel for as long as we did on so little, was that. Now, my husband and I are not budget travelers. Even though I hate to spend money, we aren't all about, okay, well, let's take the absolute cheapest bus, and let's never go out to eat, and let's sleep on the streets or whatever else. We aren't that kind of traveler. We classify ourselves as mid-grade travelers because we love to save as much as we possibly can, but at the same time, we want to save so that we can afford to splurge in other areas, so that we can go out for a nice dinner, or we can stay at a resort for a night or two, or we can go on that fancy safari or whatever. And so I think doing things like that is really useful in allowing you to splurge every so often. And so we also look at the larger ticket items that cost so much. So not only lodging, but also flights. And so we've gotten really good at, there are so many websites out there that are great at cutting costs for your flights, be it like Skyscanner or Google Flights or Momondo or Kayak. And I mean, there are all sorts of websites out there that are really great. And as long as you shop around a little bit and you're flexible with your dates and that kind of thing, then you can find cheaper flights. And then on top of that, we also travel with travel credit cards, which are really great for getting reward points that you can then later cash in for free flights. And so we've been accruing all of these points, and I think now we have about 3 long haul flights completely paid for. So when we do resume travel again, we'll be able to get to Southeast Asia completely free, which is fantastic. But obviously that you have to be careful with having too many credit cards. You don't want to rack up debt. And so you have to be very cognizant of what you're spending and keep an eye on your money and not think, oh, well, it's a credit card, I can pay it later. Never spend more than you have, and pay off your bills immediately so you're never paying interest. You know, all of those kinds of your standard money intelligence things that you do even at home outside of travel. But all of those kind of compound and help to save a lot of costs while you're traveling, for sure.
Those were great tips. Where was did you mention the place that you can go and sign up for pet sitting and around the world? Like, where do you go for that?
Sure, there are a number of programs for it, but the one that we personally use is called Trusted House Sitters. And I do have an affiliate link if you care to have that at all, just because I love them so much, that we've been with them for a couple of years now. And I wish that we had known about them even before we started traveling ourselves, because we had our kitties at home, and every time we would go home for Christmas, we were begging our friends to come watch them, or to even just stop in a time or twice to make sure they were still alive, you know, whatever else. And it would have been great to even be aware of that kind of program. And it's fantastic for both homeowners who want to travel and for the travelers who need a place to stay.
And these people are vetted before they are matched?
Yes. So it's entirely review based. And you have to be verified. So they take your address and whatever else and make sure you're a real person. But then it's all review based. And so if you are a pet sitter and you do a terrible job, then the homeowner is going to review you poorly, and you're not going to get any future sits. So yeah, and the same goes for the homeowners. I mean, the pet sitters can review the homeowners as well, and so if there are any problems with that, then yeah. Trusted House Sitters also provides some built-in insurance kinds of things. So if a pet sitter breaks something while they're in the home or anything along those lines, then they're covered as well. And they recently added a 24-hour vet hotline. So if you are pet sitting and a dog starts having a seizure or something and you have no idea what to do about that, you can call this emergency line and get in touch with a veterinarian immediately, who will give you some assistance and guidance on what to do in that situation.
Wow, that sounds nice. So yeah, if you can share with us the your affiliate link, then I can put it in your show notes so people can take advantage of that. That sounds like a wonderful opportunity to go, not only because the cost of lodging can be so expensive, and if
Mm-hmm.
that's something we can cut down on, then people might want to travel more as well. So
Absolutely.
thank you for
And it's
bringing that
nice
up.
with the house sitting too, because you get a place all to yourself. So you're not, especially in the time of COVID, you're not interacting with a lot of people in a hotel lobby or a hostel or anything like that. And yeah, you kind of miss out on the whole cultural aspect that something like a hostel can bring, and connecting and speaking with fellow travelers. But in the time of COVID, it's nice to have a place to yourself and know that you have that privacy and that space when you need it.
Sounds like a really good opportunity there. So given that we don't know, I mean, travel has definitely changed post the pandemic.
Mhm.
So what are some tips that you have for people to travel safely, I guess, with everything
Mhm.
that's going on?
Oh man, that's a big question because, like you said, the travel industry really has changed quite a lot. There's a lot of uncertainty, especially with booking things. I think a lot of travelers are much more cognizant of cancellation policies and how to think of backups if something falls through. A lot of people are booking more on Airbnb than they are in hotels. All of these kinds of trends are shifting for sure. So I think the biggest thing that I could suggest as far as keeping yourself safe and your family and whomever else that you're traveling with is do be prepared. Just understand what the regulations are wherever you're going. You can typically do a standard Google search and see, okay, do they require a negative COVID test, or do they require any kind of quarantine upon arrival? And just make sure that you're aware of all of that, because the last thing you want is to have a 2-week trip and you fly to, say, the UK or something, and they have a 2-week quarantine regulation in place, and there blows your entire trip and you didn't know that ahead of time. And so just do a little bit more research ahead of time and make sure you know what you're getting into. Also pay attention to what the COVID situation is wherever you're going, and if cases are spiking or something, then make sure that you're bringing all of your extra masks and your hand sanitizer, and just be very aware of your surroundings and don't touch your face. You know, all of those standard safety things as far as not getting sick. But then also have an exit plan. So if you do get sick, what would you do? Do you know where the local hospital is? Do you know how you can get home in that case if you need to? Do you know who might be able to take care of you, because you might not be able to be in a position to take care of yourself in that regard? Will you have a place to kind of rest and recuperate? So all of those kinds of things. Just and then, of course, be aware of cancellation policies if the COVID situation changes wherever you're going, if you're able to cancel your flights or push it to a later date, or your lodging, all of those kinds of things. I would also advocate for picking up some kind of travel insurance. A lot of travel credit cards will have some of those built in, but any kind of like when we were traveling, we used a company called Safety Wing, and that included an emergency evac policy, which actually came in quite handy while when COVID hit, and we were at the southern end of Argentina, and we needed to get home, because otherwise we were going to get stuck there for months and months on end. And so they were able to fly us home because the country went into lockdown while we were there, and got a free flight home. So yeah, just be aware of those policies and kind of know what you're getting into.
Those are some really good tips. Two of the things that really stress me out about traveling is driving and then the language barrier.
Yes.
What have you found as far as how to get around those two, and what have you learned that could be useful for people that should we drive or public transportation, and then the language barrier? How do we overcome that?
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. Okay. So first of all, about the driving, I think we rented a car maybe 3 times the entire 9 months that we traveled. Once was in Namibia because it's a complete desert and no, they don't have any kind of public transit there. And then same kind of thing in South America, at least where we were. But if you're in cities, especially, you don't need to rent a car. And I would say that it's going to stress you out even more if you do, because then you've got to deal with parking it, and you've got to deal with the costs of that, and of gas, and actually making your way around the cities, especially if they drive on the opposite side of the road from what you're used to. That can all just be completely unnecessary stress. And so what we advocate for is simple walking. I mean, we walked everywhere, which was fantastic. And we always tried to look for lodging that was close enough to all of the things that we wanted to do so that we could walk. And if it was a little farther away, then we looked into, okay, well, what are the public transit options to at least get us close enough to where we wanted to go, and then you can walk the rest of the day from there. And so sometimes we would, like in Istanbul, we stayed in one of the suburbs of Istanbul, not in the city itself. But the ferry system there is absolutely superb. And so we were right up the street from a ferry port, and we could just go down and hop the ferry. It was like a dollar for both of us each way, which is totally affordable. And it would take us straight into the city. And then we spend the day walking around the city and exploring all of the different temples and whatever else there. And that was it. I mean, we didn't have to worry about driving or anything like that. And so I definitely avoid private vehicles whenever possible. A lot of places will have really, really good public transit systems, especially if you're in a city. And when they don't, things like Uber and Lyft are actually quite prevalent in many places around the world. And so just do a little research to see what's available in whatever destination you're going to. And if you can avoid renting a car, then yeah, just don't, because oftentimes it's just more hassle than it's worth. Let somebody else drive in the city that they're familiar with, rather than you. And then what was the other one that you said?
Language barrier.
Language barriers, yes. So as far as language barriers go, I'm a huge fan of Duolingo. I love practicing all of these little phrases and whatever else. And even if you're only going to be there for two weeks, you don't have to study the language a lot ahead of time or anything like that. But even if you start at the very basics of the language and you learn how to say please and thank you and hi and bye and the numbers, I mean, if you pick up just some core things, the locals really appreciate the effort. Even if you're terrible at it, even if you forget it, being able to say one or two things in the local language really shows that you are trying and making an effort, and they really respect that. So I definitely suggest wherever you're going, try to learn at least a few key phrases and jot them down, put them in your phone or something like that, so that you have them at the ready and you can pull them out whenever you're interacting with the locals. Now, we found in a lot of places, English was perfectly fine, and especially in the touristed areas, because English is such a worldwide language, it's really easy to get around if you are fluent in English. If you're not, then that it can be a bit more cumbersome, and then that is outside of my area of expertise. But yeah, learn some of the local language. And then my other tool that I love to use is Google Translate. And this is absolutely fantastic because it's on your phone, and as long as you have decent internet coverage, you can do live translates on all sorts of things. It has a voice option, so you can speak in your language. It'll repeat it in whatever language it's translating to. Then they can speak in their language, and it'll translate it back. And so it's a really handy thing to be able to speak to people. It's a little quirky here and there, and sometimes you can't have too many breaks because it'll think you're done speaking, silly things like that. But it's a great way to kind of bridge that gap. The other feature that I love about it is you can put it on photo mode. And if you're looking at a menu, for example, and you have no idea what you're ordering, you can hover your phone, the camera over it, and you don't have to take a picture or anything, but just as you're hovering it over, it will translate on your screen all of the words that it sees. And so we use that like crazy in Japan, of course, because there's a lot of kanji, and it's like, well, even if I knew how to pronounce it, maybe I could kind of figure out what this is. But the fact that I don't even know what the characters mean or how they're spoken, that's a huge barrier, and that's very difficult. But with a tool like that, you're able to kind of, again, bridge that gap, which is very, very useful. So yeah.
Wow, technology's made traveling so much easier, hasn't
Oh my
it?
goodness, yes.
So I'm a big fan of teaching kids how to use public transportation because they might not need it in the United States or in the local area where they live, but to be able to feel confident to travel, to go to New York and use the subway, to go to San Francisco and know how to use the BART system, or to go to Europe and use the rail system, or the bus system. A lot of kids nowadays don't know how to do that. So I'm glad you brought up that public transportation is something we can rely, because it really frees you to be able to use that instead of feeling like renting that car. I don't want to be responsible in a different country with my license regarding insurance. And then gas is so much more expensive. We think gas is expensive in the United States, but it's so much more expensive everywhere else, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So I like the Google Translate and the Duolingo that you mentioned, as far as using that as to erase the or at least limit the language barrier. What other tips have you learned that you want to share with us in your travels that my audience can benefit from, as far as making the most out of traveling? And then are there any specific places that you've went to that you absolutely recommend we all should go and check out?
Oh man.
I know it's a lot.
That's a tough question, because as far as like where the best places are to go, we've been to so many amazing places, and we love them all for very different reasons. So, I mean, if you're looking for wildlife, I would definitely suggest you check out Namibia. A lot of people talk about Tanzania as kind of like the go-to place for African wildlife, but Namibia is kind of this hidden gem that people don't really know much about, and you can get much of the same kinds of wildlife there. And we did a self safari there, and it was absolutely amazing. We spent 6 days in Etosha National Park, and we went out every single day and drove around to all the different watering holes and we saw thousands of animals. It was fantastic. It was zebras and giraffes and elephants and rhinos and the whole shebang. It was wonderful. And so I would definitely recommend something like that. Namibia also has like these massive sand dunes that are fun to climb and whatever else. I loved Patagonia as well. So the southern area of South America is just absolutely gorgeous. And we went hiking all throughout there with my dad, who loves hiking. And so that was a blast. I loved the culture of Istanbul. I mean, that, and they have a lot of street cats, which I love cats, and so that was a huge draw for me. It's like, I want to see all of the Istanbul street cats. But the culture there was fantastic too, because they had all of the calls to prayer resonating through the city streets and everything else, and the teas and all of the different the foods there, and it was fantastic, and it was completely different from all of the culture that we're used to here in the States, and so that was really cool. I love Japan as well. It was one of the first international trips. Well, it was the first international trip I took with my husband. And it was the first time he had ever been outside the country. I mean, talk about jumping into the deep end. But we've always been fascinated with with their culture as well, and into anime and all that geeky stuff, But we loved the people there. They were super nice, and they have such a high level of integrity. I left a souvenir bag at a restaurant and came back the next day, and they had it there and were happy to give it to me and whatever else. And people have said that they've lost their wallets on the streets, and the Japanese will track them down to find them and return their wallets completely intact. Is still everything in there. So I love the people in Japan, and they're just absolutely wonderful. And the food is fantastic, and all of the history there, and their beautiful landscapes and whatever else. It's a wonderful place. So it's hard for me to recommend any one place, because I find something new and exciting everywhere I go. I've always been drawn to whatever is different, and I want those new experiences. And so whenever I can get to a new country that offers some of that, it's like, oh, this was so exciting because X, Y, and Z happened, and this was something I had never done before, and I learned something from it and became hopefully a better person because of it. So it's difficult for me to recommend any one place, but
Yeah, I mean, Turkey is definitely on one of my bucket lists, and then I just recently watched the memoirs of a geisha again after so many years, and I was like, oh, yeah, I
yes.
just want to go to Japan one of these days and just love everything
Mhm.
about the Japanese culture. But yeah, I'm sure the world is huge, and every culture has their own amazing stories to tell and things to
Mhm.
share. And so this is what I love about traveling. This is what really appealed to me about your experience, and just learning from you and about your travels. I guess right now I'm vicariously traveling through other people, since I'm
Sure.
not really going anywhere because of the pandemic.
Mhm.
Um, but definitely excited to start planning again. Are there any don'ts that you want to share, like things not to do?
I would say, specific to Americans, don't be the stupid tourist of, hey, I'm American and I refuse to abide
Follow your
by the
rules.
local customs or anything like. But I wouldn't think. I mean, most people who are looking to travel aren't necessarily like that. But I would say be open rather than don't do that. I would say be open. Cultural experiences, be willing to abide by the local customs, be willing to try some new foods that you've never seen before. Sorry, you're not going to find macaroni and cheese in Japan, or well, maybe you might, but
Right.
they'll have soy sauce or something. I don't know. But just be open and know that it's not America, and it's not going to be the same as wherever you're coming from. And that's the joy of travel, is that it is so different, and you're able to learn from different people. I've learned so much about problem solving simply from experiencing new cultures and new ways of thinking. It's like, wow, I hadn't thought of it like that. And I can take that lesson and apply it elsewhere in my life. And you don't even realize what you've learned until you're faced with those situations. And suddenly it's like, oh, hey, you know what? Back when I did X, Y, or Z, I learned this unique little thing that I could do with this. And maybe we can do something similar over here. And so, yeah, absolutely.
Great tips. So, given everything you've learned traveling for the past, what was it, 9 months that you were on, and then just knowing about being in the field of travel, what would you tell your younger self about traveling, and then just being living a nomadic lifestyle?
Start sooner. I think the world is a huge place, and there's so much to see. And unfortunately, as our bodies age, it gets harder to do some of those more strenuous activities. And so I would definitely say, if you're able to get out as soon as you can, go experience those things, especially since when you do meet with new cultures and new ways of thinking, new ideas, it changes the track of your life, and it changes your outlook, and it changes how you interact with other people back home, and how you approach your own life. And so the earlier in your life that you can do that, I would say the better, because I fully believe travel makes us better humans, because you learn how to think like other people who are very, very different from you. And when you're able to do that, you're able to sympathize and even empathize with people in different situations. And that makes you more willing to help those who are in need, and just go through life in a more giving manner, and being able to help all of those who are around you, and just be a better human, a better person that others want to be around. And so absolutely, it's just, I don't know, get out earlier. So yeah.
It definitely does enhance our lives and make us wiser by learning from other cultures and being exposed to other people. So I highly recommend travel as well. So where can people find you and connect with you?
Oh, absolutely. So our website is bigtinyworld.com. And then we're on all the socials. So it's Big Tiny World or Big Tiny World Travel on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all of those kinds of things. So we're easy to find.
Well, thank you so much for coming and talking to me and making the time and sharing your experience with us and sharing these wonderful tips. I can't wait to schedule my trips for the coming years. And so
Certainly.
thank you for sharing all that.
Yeah, thank you so much. This has been a pleasure.
Are you as excited to get back to traveling as I am? I've learned some great tips from Brianna in today's interview. Let me know what you'll be taking away from today's discussion by visiting transforminganxiety.com/43. If you haven't already, you can show support for the Mental Health Break podcast by subscribing wherever you're tuning in from today. And while you're at it, feel free to give us a review or a 5-star rating, since that'll help others find the podcast. We have some great interviews lined up, and you don't want to miss a single episode. Subscribe today so you get notified when new episodes drop. I can't wait to see you here next week. Same time, same place. Bye for now.